A respected professor is found dead inside his locked office. The door is locked from the inside. The safety latch is engaged. The only window is sealed shut. There is no gun, no shell casing, no bullet hole in the walls or furniture, no sign of a struggle, and no one entered the room after he locked the door. Yet the professor was shot once, straight through the heart, from only a few feet away. A shot fired by a killer who was not in the room. A shot fired by a gun that police could not find, and a murder that should have been impossible. This is the case that detectives at Westbridge Police Department still talk about. The case they call the Mirror Room Murder. Dr. Raymond Hale was one of the most respected physics professors at Westbridge University. He was 54 years old, quiet, careful, and known for being extremely private. He had one very specific habit. After every meeting in his office, he locked the door behind the person he met with. He used both the deadbolt and the metal latch. He did this every single time. On Thursday afternoon at 4:18, hallway cameras recorded Dr. Hale walking a visitor to the door of his office. The visitor was a former student named Evan Porter. Evan had been a gifted physics student years earlier, almost a prodigy. Before his career collapsed after an academic scandal, he came to campus to speak with Hale for what he claimed was closure. The hallway footage showed nothing strange. The two men talked for a moment. They shook hands. Evan walked down the hall and out of view. He did not come back. At 4:19, Dr. Hale closed the door to his office and locked it. Police later confirmed this using the electronic log for the hallway lock. No one entered after that. The office itself was simple. One desk, one chair, two bookshelves, a large wall mirror that Dr. Hale used as a writing board for formulas, a plant, some papers, nothing unusual. 12 minutes later, everything changed. At 4:31, several professors working nearby heard a single faint noise. It was not a gunshot, more like the sound of a chair falling over. One coworker knocked on the door. No answer. Campus security was called. When security tried to open the door with the master key, it did not open. The latch on the inside was hooked. The deadbolt was locked. No one could get in unless they removed the entire door. At 4:39, they finally forced the door open. Inside the room, Dr. Hale was lying on the floor next to his desk. There was one bullet wound in the center of his chest. Blood pooled under him. He had been shot at close range, but there was no gun. There was no shell casing. There was no bullet hole anywhere in the room. No signs of anyone hiding, and no one else inside the office. He had locked the room himself, and yet he was murdered inside it. When detectives arrived, they all said the same thing. This should not be possible. Detectives from the Westbridge Police Department arrived within minutes. The hallway was sealed. Faculty members were moved back. Crime scene tape went up across the entire floor. Even the first responding officers could tell this was not normal. The room looked exactly the same as it did 12 minutes earlier, when Dr. Hale had locked the door. Nothing was knocked over except the chair he had fallen against. No books were disturbed. No drawers were open. No papers were scattered. It was as if he had simply dropped dead where he stood. But then, the medical examiner looked at the wound. A clean entry point, right through the center of the chest. The kind of shot that only happens from a steady hand at close range. This was not a fall, not a medical condition, not suicide. This was homicide. And homicide inside a sealed room is the worst nightmare for any detective. Detective Lauren Maddox, the lead investigator, started with the basics. Was there any gun in the room? No. They searched under the desk, behind the shelves, even inside the ceiling tiles. Nothing. Was there any shell casing? No. None on the floor. None under furniture. Was there any bullet hole? No. Not in the walls. Not in the bookshelves. Not in the mirror. Not in the desk. The bullet had to be somewhere, but it was not inside the room. Did anyone enter or leave? According to the hallway camera, the answer was no. The only person who had entered the office that day was Evan Porter, and he had left before the door was locked. Did the window open? No. It was a sealed industrial window, permanently closed. Did the professor own any firearm? No. He had no permit, no record of ownership. So how did a bullet enter a locked room? And where was the weapon that fired it? The forensic team spent the next hour mapping the interior. They checked every inch of the walls. They measured the height of the wound. They recreated the position of the body. They even used lasers to estimate the likely angle of the shot. The result made the case even stranger. The bullet was fired from a position almost directly in front of Dr. Hale, about 6 or 7 feet away, at chest level. But there was nothing and no one in front of him, just the mirror. The large wall mirror took up half the wall. Behind it was a layer of plaster and solid concrete. No hidden space, no hollow section. Detectives tapped every inch of the wall. It was solid. A bullet cannot pass through concrete without leaving a mark, and there was no mark. So how did the shot reach him? The next problem was the timeline. If Dr. Hale was shot around 4:31, the killer would have needed 1. Access to the office. 2. A way to fire a gun at close range. 3. A way to escape before the door was opened, but the door was locked from the inside. It had been locked since 4:19. There was no sign of forced entry. No bypass of the latch. No tampering with the lock. Anyone who tried to break in would have left a mark, but the door was untouched. It meant the killer had not entered after the professor locked the door, which left only one conclusion. The gun was already inside the room, but that made no sense either, because they had searched and found nothing. A gun does not vanish. A gun does not melt. A gun does not simply disappear, unless, Maddox thought, the gun was not a gun anymore. One strange detail. There was one object in the room that did not match the rest. A small laser pointer sat on the corner of the desk. Black, plastic. Nothing unusual. Common in classrooms, but something about it caught Maddox's attention. It had a faint burn mark on the side. A small, melted patch, as if it had overheated. When she picked it up, it was slightly warm. She asked the forensic team when the photo of the desk was taken. They checked the timestamp. It had been taken 10 minutes earlier. Why would a simple laser pointer still be warm? She added it to evidence. Later, this detail would become the turning point. But at that moment, the crime scene still looked impossible. A gunshot with no gun. A bullet with no entry point. A room that no one entered. A man who locked himself in moments before dying. Detective Maddox stared at the mirror. Something about its surface bothered her. It reflected the entire room, but there was a faint spot, almost invisible, where the glass looked fogged or slightly discolored. She leaned closer. What she saw changed everything. Detective Maddox walked toward the mirror with a feeling she could not explain. Something about its surface looked wrong. Not cracked, not chipped, just different. When the hallway light shifted, she saw it. A tiny, faintly fogged mark, almost invisible, only catching the light at a very specific angle. She touched it with her gloved hand. It was warm, not hot, but definitely warmer than the rest of the surface. A mirror should not hold heat in a single small spot. Glass cools evenly. It does not keep hot patches unless something extremely hot has touched it directly. She called to the forensic tech. Scan this spot. Thermal check. The tech held the scanner close. The screen showed cold blue everywhere, except for one small yellow dot. A heat residue. The tech frowned. This is not from a gunshot. There is no penetration, no crack. It is heat, localized. Almost like a burst of hot gas. Hot gas, not a bullet. That was when Maddox's attention shifted to the desk, to the laser pointer still sitting where they found it, still slightly warm. She picked it up again. This time, instead of just turning it over, she unscrewed the housing. Inside were not batteries, not a diode, not a circuit designed to project light. Inside were 2 burned metal cylinders, each small enough to fit inside a pen, each shaped like a miniature barrel, and each showing clear signs of combustion. It was not a laser pointer at all. It was a disguised, dual-chamber micro-weapon. Both chambers had fired, but only one fired a real projectile. The other chamber produced a blast of superheated gas, not a bullet. A microcharge designed to burn itself out and destroy internal evidence. The heat bloom on the mirror was from that second charge, not from a bullet striking the surface. Maddox held the pointer close to the light. The internal metal rails were scorched black. The firing pins melted. The first chamber empty. The second chamber burned into slag. She whispered to herself, "One shot killed him." The second shot destroyed the weapon from the inside. A perfect cover. The key question now was simple. Who put this device on Hale's desk? Who knew how to build it? And who knew that Hale would pick it up the moment he sat down? The answer led back to one person, Evan Porter. The only person who visited Hale that afternoon. The only person who studied microprojectile engineering. The only person who had a reason to want Hale dead. But Maddox still needed proof he planted the weapon. She needed something concrete, and she was about to find it. The past that explains everything. Detective Maddox returned to the station that night with the laser pointer sealed in an evidence bag. The micro barrels inside it proved one thing clearly. Someone had engineered a weapon that was never meant to look like a weapon. Someone who understood microscale mechanics. Someone who knew Dr. Hale well enough to predict exactly how he would pick it up. There was only one name that fit. Evan Porter. Maddox opened his academic file. The pages told the story she already suspected, but now the details mattered. 3 years earlier, Evan had been one of the brightest students in Westbridge University's engineering department. His specialty was micromachining, not robots, not circuits, but building physical devices on a tiny scale. Precision work, fine tolerances, exactly the skills needed to create the weapon found on Hale's desk. But the promising career ended abruptly. Back then, Evan was working on a research project that aimed to create miniature silent projectile systems. It was a controversial area, partly funded by a defense contractor. He was young, ambitious, and under enormous pressure. And he cheated. He altered data to make his prototypes look more advanced than they really were. Dr. Hale reviewed the project, noticed the irregularities, and confronted him. Hale did not yell. He did not shame Evan publicly. He simply filed the report required by university policy. The grant collapsed. The defense partner withdrew. Evan was expelled from the program, and his life fell apart fast. He drifted between part-time jobs, lived in small apartments, lost touch with most of his classmates, and carried one thought that grew darker every year. Dr. Hale ruined everything. Over the next few weeks, Maddox and her team gathered hard evidence. Online purchases revealed that Evan had bought a set of micro-machining tools 6 weeks before the murder, exactly the type needed to build a dual-chamber micro-firing device. Receipts showed he also bought specialized polymers and soft metal alloys that can burn at controlled temperatures. All components matched the weapon recovered from Hale's office. Even more telling, digital forensics uncovered Evan types of late-night online searches: pressure contact switch, combustion microchamber, controlled burn polymer, barrel alignment heat test, disguise micro-ignition inside device. Every phrase pointed toward designing a weapon that would self-destroy after firing. This was not theory. This was engineering. Then came the most important clue. A graduate student told detectives that on the morning of the murder, Evan had approached her with a small box. He asked her to deliver it to Dr. Hale. He said it was a simple gift, an apology for the past, something symbolic. The student delivered the box. Hale opened it. Inside was the laser pointer. Evan did not need to sneak into the office. He placed the weapon in plain sight through an innocent messenger. Later that afternoon, he visited Hale in person. The camera footage of them shaking hands now made sense. He wanted the meeting to look friendly. He wanted the last recorded interaction to show no conflict. He wanted the weapon to sit in front of Hale, waiting. Minutes after Evan left, Hale locked the door behind him, as he always did. He sat down, reached for the laser pointer, and unknowingly activated the pressure trigger. The first chamber fired a real micro round into his chest. The second chamber discharged hot gas, melting the internal parts and leaving the faint mark on the mirror. A perfect setup. A self-destroyed weapon. A murder that looked impossible. But Evan had left behind a trail that was anything but perfect. Receipts, search history, tool marks, materials, and a delivery he thought no one would question. Detective Maddox closed the file. There was no doubt now. The weapon was his. The motive was his. And the plan was his. All that was left was to find him. Detective Maddox arrived at Evan Porter's apartment only minutes after her team called. The unit was silent. Nothing broken. Nothing rushed. Just an empty room and a workbench covered in tools that told the whole story. Micro machining drills, soft alloy scraps, burned polymer, blueprint sketches of a dual-chamber firing device. Everything Evan used to build the disguised weapon sat right there in plain sight. But Evan himself was gone. A neighbor reported seeing him leave earlier with a backpack, calm and quiet, taking a rideshare car out of the complex. He was not running blindly. He had a destination. Maddox looked around the apartment and knew exactly where he went. The old lab, the old microengineering lab at Westbridge University, had been closed for years. The equipment was removed. The room was used mostly for storage, but it still carried the history of countless hours Evan spent there when he was at his best. It was the one place he would go, the only place that still felt like his. When Maddox and two officers reached the lab building, the halls were nearly empty. The door to the old room was shut, but a faint light glowed from underneath. She tried the handle. Locked. She knocked once. "Evan, this is Detective Maddox. Open the door." Silence. Then his voice came through the door, calm and distant. "I knew you would figure it out." Maddox kept her tone steady. "We have your tools, your search history, the student who delivered the box. This is over. Open the door." Evan exhaled slowly. "He destroyed my future. I made one mistake, and he erased my entire life. You know what it means to lose everything you were supposed to become." Maddox replied firmly, "You built a weapon that killed a man. You need to come out." For a moment, there was no sound. Then Evan said, "I did not come here to hide. I came here because this is where everything started, and this is where it should end." A soft click echoed inside. Not loud, more like the sound of a metal contact touching a power source. Maddox recognized it instantly. "Pressure, trigger." She shouted, "Move back." The officers pulled her away just before a tiny pop sounded inside the lab. Not a gunshot, more like a miniature firecracker. They broke the door. Inside, Evan Porter was on the floor, slumped against the storage cabinets. A small handmade device lay beside him, still warm, smoke curling from its burned metal core. He had built a single-shot micro-weapon for himself. A final act of control. A final choice in a life that spiraled beyond saving. Paramedics tried to revive him. They could not. The case was over. Later that night, Maddox returned to Dr. Hale's office one last time. The room was empty now. The floor cleaned. The desk cleared. Only the mirror remained on the wall. She stepped closer and saw the faint blur of heat residue. The clue that exposed everything. The mark left by the second microcharge that burned the weapon from within. A tiny flaw in an otherwise perfect plan. Sometimes that is all it takes. She touched the cool glass. This mirror had reflected the moment Hale died, the moment the device fired, and the one mistake Evan Porter could not erase. It was a reminder that even the smartest criminals miss something. Even a genius leaves a trace. And even an impossible crime is never truly impossible. With the room quiet behind her, Detective Maddox walked away from the case, knowing one truth would stay with her. Brilliance can build extraordinary things, but brilliance without conscience can build something far more dangerous. The mirror room murder would be taught in classrooms and discussed in forensic labs for years. Not because it was supernatural, not because it was unexplainable, but because it showed how a murder can seem perfect until the smallest reflection reveals the truth.